Miyanda lost her parents at a young age. As a result, she was raised by her mum's brother and his wife, Aunt Mabel. Her aunt was nice to her when her uncle was around, but he usually traveled out of town on business. Those were the times when her aunt would demand that Miyanda does housework, even though they had a maid. In spite of having a maid, she didn't want Miyanda living for free, so she gave her chores and insisted they get done, even when Miyanda had to study for exams or do homework. Miyanda didn't mind doing the chores, but it wasn't easy with homework and exams. "What is this? Did you wash the dishes?" "Hey!" "No, Mama. I will go to the kitchen now," she would say. "I was just finishing my homework." "Homework? You want to live here for free?" "Hey!" But whenever Miyanda's uncle got back from work, her aunt would pretend to be nice to Miyanda. She was, basically, not a very nice woman. The only other person who was nice to her in that house, apart from her uncle, was the maid. Whenever her uncle was around, he would chat with her. "How is my angel doing?" he would ask. "I am fine, uncle. I have exams in 2 weeks. If that is the case, I hope you are studying. You know education opens doors. It's very important that you study." "Yes, uncle," she would say. "Promise me you will focus on school and give it your best." That was what your parents wanted. After years of studying, Miyanda finally finished secondary school and got a bursary to study at the University of Zambia. She worked hard, studied hard. She made friends with her roommates and enjoyed their company. They attended lectures together and spent their free time together. She was studying for a degree in business studies and eventually passed with flying colors. "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's finally over," she said to her friends. "We are finally free." "No more books," agreed Charma. "Let's go out to celebrate," suggested Stella. "I don't have anything nice to wear," said Miyanda. "Don't worry. You can borrow one of my dresses," Stella said. Off they went for a night out in Lusaka to celebrate with all the other graduates. When she moved back home from university, Miyanda wasted no time. She began looking for a job related to her newly acquired degree. She went from one job interview after another, but there were no offers. She wanted to get a job desperately so that she could move out of her uncle's home, but that dream hit a stumbling block due to no job offers. Her friend, Stella, told her about an opportunity she had seen advertised. "Well, it's not exactly glamorous or related to your degree, but it's a way out of the country." "Girl, I will do anything. My aunt treats me like rubbish. I need a job." "Go for it. Give it a try." "I don't know where to start." "Just go to the British Council. They have all the information about the roles. There are shortages of carers in the UK. I really need this, my dear." "Yeah, you know Chu. She was at UNZA with us. She was 2 years ahead." "Yeah, I remember her. Why?" "She looked for a job for 1 year. Imagine. She never found one. Then, she went on the same program last year. She works in London. I hear she even drives and lives in a nice area. She bought a plot near the airport and is building. Just after a year." "Really? That's amazing." "Yeah, lots of people do it and make good money. Besides, once you sort out your stay, you can switch careers, if you like. You can do something related to your degree." The next day, Miyanda went to the British Council for advice and they helped her fill out the necessary documentation. Thereafter, she was granted a visa for 2 years. When Miyanda got to London, she experienced culture shock. The fact that almost anything under the sun could be bought in London shops or online was a huge surprise to her. People were constantly rushing about. She wasn't sure why. She found it hard to make friends. Her colleagues tended to stick to their own tight-knit groups, mostly socializing with people they'd known for years. She did, however, move into shared accommodation with Gabby and Cora. "Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Our house is complete now since there are 3 bedrooms, Cora said. "Do you like movies?" "We like Friday night movies," Gabby said. "I love movies, especially on a Friday night," Miyanda responded. "We're going to get on like a house on fire." They were both from Europe. They were very friendly and chatty, but they were quite messy. Miyanda found herself tidying up more than they did. They would cook and leave dirty saucepans, cutlery and dishes the whole day in the kitchen. She didn't mind tidying up the living room, but she drew a line of having to clean the bathroom and kitchen for everyone all the time. Eventually, Miyanda got fed up and looked for another place to live. The second place she shared with one lady, June. She was much better at being tidy, but she had this boyfriend who decided he would become their unofficial housemate. June knew that the landlord advised against having men stay overnight. She didn't care. She did whatever she wanted to do. Miyanda grew tired of seeing them cuddle half-dressed in the living room almost every weekend. June, I live here too. You guys can't be sitting in the living room in your gowns all day every weekend. Ah, what's the problem? He only comes on weekends. I know, but that is my time to relax. When do I relax if he is here every weekend? Eventually, Miyanda found accommodation elsewhere. This time she found an older lady who had a room to rent in her home. It was a grand Victorian house on 3 floors. Mrs. Martin had converted the top floor to a flat she could rent out. It had a very large double bedroom, a shower, a kitchen and a toilet. This was enough for Miyanda. She was happy she didn't have to share the flat with anyone who was extra untidy or had male company all the time. Hello, I'm Miyanda Mwamba. Nice to meet you. Come in, let's talk inside. Well, let me show you around. Mrs. Martin showed her the room and facilities and Miyanda was pleased with it. Do you mind if I ask you a bit of a personal question? I saw your surname in the email. Mwamba, are you from Zambia, by any chance? Yes, I am from Lusaka. Really? That's amazing. I was born in Zambia, in Luanshya, Mrs. Martin said. Really? What a coincidence, Miyanda said. Indeed, or is it a God-incidence? My father used to work for Boots in Luanshya in the 1950s and 60s. I have never been to Luanshya but I know where it is. I would love to go there one day. Oh, maybe one day I can take you. Mrs. Martin was lovely and friendly. She was, however, lonely. You see, she had no children and her husband had passed on. She had been close to her nephew, Philip, for years. Philip would visit her often. But ever since Kate, his girlfriend, came into his life, he never visited. This made Mrs. Martin upset. She often complained. When she asked Philip why he didn't visit, he would say he was out of the country on holiday with Kate or he was busy with work. Mrs. Martin felt lonely. She didn't have any children of her own. Philip was her late sister's only son, and they had promised to stay in each other's lives. But alas, that had changed. I don't know what that girl has done to him. Even if it's love, he has forgotten all about me. I'm sure they are busy, Miyanda would say, trying to comfort her. Not even a phone call to check on me like he used to on Sundays. Nothing. Miyanda didn't want to make Mrs. Martin feel like her feelings were insignificant, but she offered to keep her company. Well, I know I'm not much of a talker, but I can keep you company, she said to Mrs. Martin. You're so kind. I am sure you'd rather be out with people your age. Trust me, I have no friends my age. You can be my friend, she said and smiled. Mrs. Martin was grateful for Miyanda's company. Making friends did not come easily for Miyanda, so she attempted dating apps in the hopes of meeting someone special. Miyanda met David through a dating app. They met in a pub for drinks near Blackfriars Bridge. They had chemistry, or so she thought. So, what do you do? David asked her. I work for St. Anne's Care Home. Oh, that is nice. Have you been there long? Only about 6 months. Do you plan on staying a carer? I mean, not that there is anything wrong with that, but the pay can be quite low. I'm on a carer's visa, so until I sort out my residency, I guess I will stay a carer. David said a few other things related to how low the pay was for carers, and Miyanda could tell he hoped she would change jobs soon. How could she? She was on a carer's visa. Over the next few days, they chatted and texted. They met on a couple more dates and a walk in the park. But, one day, out of the blue, he ghosted her. David, are you there? Why aren't you picking up my calls? She would text. No answer. Miyanda didn't understand why, but after a few weeks, she moved on. She took on more shifts at work so that she would avoid thinking about David and what could have gone wrong. She had mentioned wanting stability and a long-term relationship. David had been quiet about this. Miyanda understood that he wasn't for her. Eventually, she learnt that being ghosted after a few dates was normal in London, much to her dismay. She would watch TV with Mrs. Martin on evenings off. In the colder months, she would make them both cups of tea. Mrs. Martin had nurses who came to check on her once a week, to make sure she had taken her medication and check her blood pressure and temperature. She was in her late 70s but refused to be moved into a care home. She loved her home and would work in her garden whenever she could. Her roses blossomed in the spring and Miyanda loved sitting in the garden, or removing weeds with Mrs. Martin. Miyanda would dust the house, even though Mrs. Martin objected. "It's okay. I don't mind," she would say. She would make tea for Mrs. Martin whenever she came in from work. After some time, Miyanda met Marcus through a workmate. Marcus was recently single and was in the market for a girlfriend. She went on a few dates with Marcus and she thought they clicked. "So do you drive?" "No, not yet," she would say. "How about holidays? Which countries have you been to?" he asked. "None yet. Just here." Marcus seemed very materialistic. He changed cars twice in the 6 months that Miyanda knew him. He also suggested going on holiday abroad a couple of times with Miyanda. "I'm still on a visa. I know I can travel but I just don't want the hassle at the airport when trying to come back into the UK after a holiday." "Hassle? Yeah, I just want peace. I don't want to be asked too many questions about my visa at the airport after a holiday. I hear that happens. But it's just France. We can fly and get back after 2 weeks. I'm saving money to renew my visa. The costs keep going up." Marcus wasn't very understanding of Miyanda's situation. He liked to spend money, go on holidays, and Miyanda always talked about renewing her visa and saving money. They were from 2 different worlds. A few weeks later, Marcus ghosted her too. She was confused as to why he didn't return her calls or texts. One day, she saw him in the city, walking hand in hand with another girl. Miyanda was disappointed. She went home and cried as she deleted his number from her phone. Mrs. Martin had heard Miyanda crying through the walls. She was trying to find out what was wrong the next day when Miyanda was making an afternoon teapot for Mrs. Martin. Miyanda explained to Mrs. Martin how confusing she was finding London dating, and Mrs. Martin tried to comfort her. It was probably cultural differences. Mrs. Martin opened up a little about her life in Zambia and how she too struggled to adjust to UK life when they moved back to England. People in the UK want different things from people in Zambia, and that eventually, Miyanda would adjust. Miyanda carried on working hard, saving and taking on extra shifts. She decided to avoid dating sites and being introduced to single men in London for now. She focused on her job and going to church on Sundays. Thandi had moved to London from Birmingham. She was from Ghana originally. Thandi and Miyanda spent some time after work, going out, watching movies and exploring castles in the English and Wales countryside. Miyanda was comfortable with touring the countryside because she didn't have to leave the country. A few years went by and Miyanda met Andy. Andy would visit his grandmother in the nursing home where Miyanda worked. Sometimes he would say hello to her. She wasn't attracted to him. She thought he was too young for her. She saw him as a nice grandson, nothing more. She was 29 years old by now and he was 27 years old. He would visit his grandma on most weekends, not every weekend. One day, Andy finally plucked the courage to ask her about her life and how she was settling in the UK. Miyanda told him she was still adjusting to UK life, even though she had been in the country for over 8 years. She still found some things surprising, for example, relationship dynamics and how she had not managed to meet anyone stable and interested in a serious relationship. He advised that most guys were not looking for a serious relationship at their age. They were still young. People at that age wanted to travel and see the world, spend as much time and money as they could enjoying life and youth. Finally, some things made sense to Miyanda, like how David had wanted her to be making more money, and how Marcus had just wanted to travel and see the world. That was a very normal thing for young people to do in the UK in their 20s and 30s. In Zambia, people marry young, say 25 to 30, so by now most of my friends are either engaged or married. 25. That is too young. It's normal over there. Andy was surprised. He didn't know anyone who was married among his friends. None of my friends are engaged or seriously dating. I know a couple or two who have been together since secondary school, but they are just living together. Living together? In Zambia, people rarely live together. But how do you get to know each other? After marriage? What if you can't get along? I have never actually thought about that. I haven't been there before, but from what I can see, it has worked out for years for many couples. He asked her out for coffee. She refused, making an excuse of being busy. She didn't want to encourage him. She knew he was younger and didn't want to lead him on. This was another thing she had brought with her from Zambia, that a relationship only worked if the man was older than the woman. "You're too young for me." "I know, but it's only 2 years. One of my friends is dating someone 5 years older than him." "Really? I have not seen that before." "It's very common here. You have much to learn. But if we get married and older, I will look older than you, then you won't want me anymore." "Married?" Andy laughed. "Who said anything about marriage? I just asked you out for a coffee. Relax." Miyanda was still learning. Andy promised he would never stop fancying her. "Oh, and if we ever did get married, I would never stop fancying you, even though you're older than me." She smiled. Margaret Martin, whose maiden name was Jeffries, was born in 1948 in Luanshya, northern Rhodesia. She had an older sister, Susan. Her father worked as a British pharmacist in Boots in Luanshya and her mother was a stay-at-home mum. They lived in a beautiful house with a large garden. The garden had guava trees, avocado trees and a huge mango tree that bore small mangoes. The mango tree was taller than it looked from afar. Its branches twisted like arms reaching in every direction, heavy with fruit that glowed green and gold in the rainy season. Mwamba used to climb up the tree and picked a few ripe mangoes. He would throw them down to his playmates, his sisters Charity and Gift. They had another friend, Margaret Jeffries, who always played with them. "Throw more," Charity demanded, hopping from foot to foot. Soon, mangoes were dropping one after another. Some landing softly in the grass, others splitting open on the ground, spilling bright orange juice onto the ground. They filled a basket with mangoes. After washing the mangoes at a nearby tap, they sat comfortably on the grass to eat them. They ate quickly, laughing, hands sticky, faces shining with juice. "This is the best one," Margaret said, holding up a half-eaten mango. "You say that about every one," Charity laughed. "Because they are all the best." Margaret's older sister, Susan, did not join in. She noticed how messy Margaret's face and dress got from the mango juice, and went to tell her mother. "Margaret! Margaret! Come here," her mother called. Margaret walked up to the veranda to her mother, sheepishly. "Look at you. And that is a new dress. What were you thinking?" "I'm sorry, Mother," Margaret said, looking sorry. "In you go. Take it off and take a bath before your father gets home." Margaret was not like her sister Susan. She loved adventure, playing in the garden with the maid's children. Her older sister preferred reading or playing with her dolls. Back in those days, African children were not allowed in schools. Only the British children went to school while the African children played at home. Margaret thought this was ridiculous, so she taught the Mutali kids how to read and write. She taught them everything she learnt at school. "Now, repeat after me. A is for apple, B is for bed, C is for cat." "A is for apple, B is for bed, C is for cat," they would say. "C, A, T, cat," she would say, sounding each letter so that they could get the phonics. "D, O, goo, dog," she would say. "D, O, goo, dog," they would say. "H, O, U, S, E, a house. House," they would say. Margaret taught them reading and writing. She even gave them the same tests her teacher at school had given her. Soon, she was asking them to read pages of her famous 5-story books by Enid Blyton. 5 on a Treasure Island. "Now, please read this story on page 1, Charity." After Charity read the story, it was Gift's turn. "Please read page 2. They would take turns reading each book until Margaret was satisfied with their pronunciation and reading. "Tomorrow we will begin reading 5 Get Into Trouble Together." "Wait a minute. That sounds like us, except we are 4, Mwamba said. "Good counting," Margaret said, feeling pleased that Mwamba was able to count as well as read. Over time, the children grew up together. In 1964, Northern Rhodesia gained independence from Great Britain. Northern Rhodesia changed its name to Zambia under the leadership of Kenneth Kaunda. President Kaunda made a lot of good changes. He introduced free education for all African children and ensured major towns had schools with books, desks, and teachers. Finally, African children could go to school and get the same level of education as British children. He also commissioned the building of the University of Zambia, the first public university in Zambia. Apart from that, he ensured that there were general hospitals in every province in the country. He made a lot of services that had been initially reserved for the British, accessible to the Zambian people. A lot more power was given to the local people. Mr. Jeffries was pleased about these changes. He had not agreed with the suppression of Africans by the British colonial rulers. Sadly, due to family commitments back in England, the Jeffries had to leave Zambia. Mr. Jeffries' parents were getting older and frail and wanted them nearer. Margaret was sad to leave Zambia. She had grown fond of the Mutal children. When they were leaving, Mr. Jeffries left his home to the Mutal family for safekeeping. He wasn't sure when they would return, but he knew the house would be well taken care of. Mrs. Mutal had been maintaining the inside and Mr. Mutal had been maintaining the outside of the house. When she moved back to England after independence, Margaret and Mwamba wrote letters to each other for a few years. Eventually, the letters trailed off. With time, everyone moved on. Charity became a teacher. Now, repeat after me. A is for apple, B is for bed, C is for cat. A is for apple, B is for bed, C is for cat, they would say. C, A, T. Cat, she would say, sounding each letter so that they could get the phonics. D, O, goo. Dog, she would say. D, O, goo. Dog, they would say. H, O, U, S, E, a house. House, they would say. In the meantime, Mwamba became an office clerk and Gift became a nurse. Because the Mutalis had the permission of the Jeffries to occupy the home, it kind of became the property of the Mutali family over time. Mwamba lived in that house all these years, maintaining it and keeping the gardens well looked after. His father left him the house, his sisters got married and moved elsewhere, but there he stayed. He made a few changes such as updating the roof, trimming a few trees, but never cutting them completely. He created a modern concrete driveway, installed solar panels for electricity when the main grid was down, and dug a borehole for a constant supply of water. While she was in the UK, Mrs. Martin decided to try and reach Mwamba by writing a letter to her old home address. They had written letters to each other in the 1960s, but she was sure he had moved away. To her surprise and delight, he still used their old home address. She received a letter from him. They wrote back and forth a few times and eventually, he invited her to visit him in Zambia. Miyanda and Mrs. Martin traveled to Zambia. First, they landed in Lusaka, then traveled by air to Ndola and eventually to Luanshya by road. This is not how I remember it at all. Well, there have been a few developments ever since the 60s. Indeed, I can see that. Wow, it looks amazing. This airport. Back then it was just a building and an airstrip. Now, it looks so modern. Miyanda felt proud and happy to hear those words from Mrs. Martin. Miyanda showed her the hospital, the stadium, all the new buildings that have come up since the 60s. I have seen pictures, but it's different to see this in reality. They checked into their hotel and relaxed. The next day, they went looking for her old house. Margaret couldn't believe how beautiful and well-maintained their old house was. The old green gate was replaced by a modern black gate, the old thatched roof had been replaced by modern roofing tiles and the cream walls were now painted white. It had been over 60 years since her father had driven their car out of this very same driveway. It seemed surreal to be driving back in. When the cab drove further in, she saw it. The huge mango tree, the reason why she had often got into trouble with her mother for ruining her pretty dress with mango juice. The orange or yellow dye in the mango juice would not come off in the wash using the detergents of the 60s. As they drove further in, she saw herself teaching Mwamba how to ride a bicycle along the driveway. Then as the car came to a stop in front of the veranda, she saw the guava tree where her kite had got stuck. Mwamba had climbed the tree without hesitation to get it down for her to stop her from crying. Her heart was beating fast when they knocked on the door. An older gentleman in his late 70s opened the door. He looked for a minute and then he smiled. "Margaret?" he asked. "Yes, it's me." "Mwamba," she answered. The two were so happy to see each other after all these years. Mwamba was surprised to see her. She hadn't phoned to say which day she was coming. Margaret had decided to surprise Mwamba. They did a lot of catching up. Mwamba had got married and had 3 children. His children were grown now and they had their own children. His wife was late now, sadly. "The house looks amazing. You took very good care of it. Well, it is a beautiful house, so why not? Her father had left the house with the mutalis, so Margaret no longer had any claim over it. However, Mwamba said she could stay there as long as she wanted. After a few weeks of chatting and enjoying the sun, Margaret refused to go back to England. You need to go back to sort out your pension so that you can access it from here, Miyanda said. I don't need to. With all this technology, I don't need to go back. But aren't there papers to sign in person, or something? No, it's all here, Margaret said, pointing to her phone. Margaret had 2 pensions, her late husband's and her own, so she was quite comfortable financially. When you convert the British pound to the Zambian kwacha, she could afford many more things in Zambia than she ever could in the UK. And there was no council tax and winter heating bills to pay, so she saved the bulk of her pension. What about your house? You can look after it for me. At least for now. I will still need my rent though, Margaret smiled. Of course. But are you sure about staying here and leaving me in your big house? What about your nephew? Oh, he hasn't even visited me in years. He won't even notice I'm not around. Oh my goodness, looks like you have thought it through. And where will you live? Mwamba has invited me to stay right here. Miyanda was shocked and impressed by Margaret's courage. Then, she remembered those childhood stories and she understood that that was just the way Margaret was. Call me every day to update me on how you're doing. And if at any point you want to come home, just call me and I will come running. But flying is faster than running, Margaret joked. You know what I mean, they laughed. When Miyanda got back to the UK, she ensured that the bills were paid on time and that she paid her rent into Margaret's account every month, as promised. Even though she had full use of the entire house this time, Margaret only requested that Miyanda still only pay for her room, which suited Miyanda just fine. A few friends would visit, but Miyanda never betrayed Margaret's trust by letting them move in. She looked after the home as if it were her own.